From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I have just been informed that a Manhattan jury has found me guilty of looking like a guy who might potentially do something illegal. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. So glad you could join us this evening. Here is your Decline of Western Civilization News Roundup for the final week of May 2024. Dateline Alexandria, Virginia, Monday, 27 May. The Libertarian Party, in its continuing quest to prove that it totally hasn't become just another band of wacky wokesters whose views are totally indistinguishable from Democrats at this point, announced this week that their 2024 presidential nominee is Chase Oliver, a gay-married former Obama campaign volunteer who thinks government vax mandates and drag queen story hour are both totally awesome. And it's a bold move. The very next day after Donald Trump comes to your convention and mocks you right to your smug little face for being an irrelevant party that's been getting 3% at best in every election for the last 50 years and doesn't seem all that interested in growing that number at all, to come out and nominate a guy who has all the same policy positions as Joe Biden. It's almost like if you were consciously trying to validate Trump's argument and totally beclown yourself by playing up to the stereotype in the most absurdly comical way conceivable, you do the exact self-same thing that the Libertarian Party has done right here. You know, it used to be said of the Libertarians that they were just nihilistic, irreligious Republicans. So they did the reasonable thing and flipped the script and became nihilistic, irreligious Democrats instead. Which is sort of a pointless look, really, when the Democrats are nihilistic and irreligious anyway. Now, for those fans keeping score at home, and I know there's many thousands of you, people wait around on the edge of their seats all year waiting to hear the news out of the Libertarian Convention. There were two potential nominees on the ballot. There was Chase Oliver, and there was none of the above. And we gotta pump the brakes here for a moment, guys. Now, in a primary election or a caucus or what have you, I totally see the point of having a none of the above option. You've got a slate of different candidates, 4 or 5, half a dozen even, and none of the above provides the voter with the option of saying, no, I don't like any of these idiots. But this is the first time ever in my life I have heard of having a none of the above option at a national nominating convention. Because what happens, let's just spitball it around, if none of the above wins? You've just nominated a phrase to be your presidential candidate instead of a person, which, who knows, maybe that might be the best way of improving on that 3% figure, by being the first party to ever provide a none of the above option on a presidential election, general election ballot, which I guess, taken to its logical endpoint, wouldn't that then be the ultimate expression of libertarianism? The best president is a non-existent one? I mean, it would certainly beat the one we currently have. Dateline Washington, Tuesday, 28 May. 100 years ago this week, the U.S. Congress bowed to overwhelming public pressure by instituting a near-total ban on foreign immigration. I know that probably sounds quite bizarre to current-day Americans, but it's a real thing that happened. And this wasn't even the last time it happened. The American people, many millions of them, they wrote to their elected representatives and they said, look, we've had several decades of massive immigration, which is all well and good. We had a continent that we were trying to populate after all. We needed the workers. But now that the western frontier is closed and we no longer have that same pressing need for thousands of extra workers to build all the new infrastructure, the prudent thing to do at this point is to put a pause on new immigration so that we can assimilate the people who have come over already, so that we can get them fully integrated and acculturated to being Americans. And when that work is complete, and if the economic conditions warrant it, then we can open things back up to new immigrants in another 15 or 20 years or so. And here's the freaking crazy part. All the congressmen and senators, they read all those letters that came in, and then they did the thing that their constituents wanted them to do. Nowadays, they call that populism, and they tell us it's a very, very bad and dangerous thing. A threat to democracy, in fact. Which is ironic, since 100 years ago, we just called it democracy. We held up such things as evidence that our system is the best system. Legislators used to have to be responsive to their constituents, or they would get thrown out of office. It's a simple, elegant, very effective form of political calculus. that somewhere along the way between then and now has simply been got rid of and dispensed with. Nowadays, if you even gently broach the subject of perhaps potentially dialing down the level of mass migration, you immediately get shouted down as a racist and a xenophobe, even probably by your own congressman whose job is supposed to be advocating for your interests with the central government. You are simply required to accept without comment that mass migration in the millions per year is not only a permanent feature of American life, but a good and proper thing that you are required to like and to celebrate if you know what's good for you. And as we begin Pride Month, it's a good time for that reminder that in America in the third decade of the 21st century, your woke left-wing overlords require you to accept and affirm all the same things that they accept and affirm. First they make you tolerate, then they make you celebrate, then they make you participate. And it doesn't take all that many years to get from, well, okay, I guess I don't have a problem with gay people getting married, to I have to take my kids down to the drag queen story hour because if I don't, someone might call me transphobic on social media. It's like a 12-year straight line from tolerating to participating, and it's a primrose path that a distressing number of Americans have been all too happy to walk down. Dateline San Francisco, Wednesday, 29 May. In my favorite story this week about dumb wokesters making fools of themselves with their own crippling ignorance, city officials in San Francisco had to scramble this week to pull down a Revolutionary War-era flag from a downtown plaza where it has flown without any comment or complaint from anybody ever since Flag Day 1964 in an area named the Plaza of American Flags, the whole purpose of which is the display of, as you might have guessed, flags from American history. The flag in question is the Appeal to Heaven banner, the one with the pine tree. You've seen it before. It was first flown by George Washington himself as his personal naval standard, and there is some dispute over whether it was the first official naval jack of the Continental Navy as a whole, but in any event, it was one of the first. And for fully 2.5 centuries, nobody saw any reason to be offended by the Appeal to Heaven banner. Nobody even really noticed it all that much who wasn't a fan of historical vexillology. But that all changed this week. This week, according to the intrepid journalists in the industry we used to call the press, the Appeal to Heaven banner suddenly became divisive and controversial and associated with right-wing extremism. You know how the drill goes. It's all the same words and phrases the fake news industrial complex trots out when they want to take some innocent, inoffensive thing and turn it into a horrific, offensive, racist hate crime now. So how was it that this obscure banner from the mid-1770s suddenly became a symbol of all that is evil and unholy in the entire universe? Well, somebody carried one at a Trump rally. And worse yet, most horrifyingly of all, a picture surfaced from last year of an Appeal to Heaven banner being flown at Justice Samuel Alito's vacation home. I know, it's a lot to take in. We will get through this together. We've got trauma counselors standing by if you should need them. So the woke fake news arithmetic is pretty simple here. The flag was carried by a Trump supporter, and it was flown from Sam Alito's house. Therefore, it must be some sort of right-wing hate symbol. And everything worked out just great until San Francisco, the most liberal, progressive city ever created by Gaia the Earth Mother, realized that they've been flying that same right-wing hate symbol every day for the last 60 years. And they said, shit! We can't leave it up because that wrecks the whole smear job that we're trying to pull by declaring it a right-wing hate symbol. And if we take it down, people will notice we're taking it down, and they'll realize we're taking it down because we're a bunch of ignorant, foolish buffoons. But if we don't want to tacitly admit we're a bunch of foolish, ignorant buffoons, so here's what we'll do. Get me a couple of guys from the Parks Department, tell them to change into some plain clothes, drive down there in their personal car, on the down low, and then run up there real fast and yank that flag down before anybody has a chance to start taking video. And if anybody does get the thing on video, we can just blame it on random flag thieves, because it's San Francisco. People steal all kinds of shit. At least that's the way they wanted it to work out. Did it work out that way? No, it did not. Not by a long shot. That deliciously embarrassing video was all over the Twitter sphere-verse within a matter of hours, as well it should have been. So well done, San Francisco. You are still the bright, shining city on the hill of the American intellect, and don't you ever change. Dateline Philadelphia, Thursday, 30 May. President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden flatly refused to answer this week when queried by a reporter on whether he plans to serve out his full 4-year second term in the event that somehow, improbably, he is returned to office, despite being the all-time worst president in American history, including the accidental ones. Biden was standing on the tarmac next to Air Force One with a collection of local officials, looking, as he often does, like a confused geriatric who's waiting for someone to come along and tell him what to do next, when a reporter yelled out, quote, "President Biden, will you be serving your full 4-year term or handing over power to Vice President Harris?" To which Biden replied, quote, "You're not hurt, are you?" At which point the reporter asked him to clarify his answer, to which Biden replied, quote, "Did you fall on your head or something?" At which point, if I was that reporter, I might have said no, but I've seen you fall on your head at least half a dozen times. And we've got another case here of Joe Biden being just astoundingly terrible at politics. When somebody asks you that question, are you going to serve your term if the people elect you to it? There is only one conceivable answer you can give. It's a 3-letter word that begins with Y and ends with S. What kind of dumbass, doddering buffoon hears that question and gives or even contemplates giving any answer except yes? That's actually a really important question. It's not a question you try to give a cute, jokey answer to. You know why? Because if you fail to give a straight answer to that question, if you prevaricate and beat around the bush and leave it ambiguous and thus imply that you might just ride off into the sunset sometime in mid-2026 and hand the reins over to the California cackler, you're actually hurting yourself in the election that's coming up in November that you are ostensibly trying to win. And why is that? Well, because Kamala Harris is even less popular than you are, Joe. In fact, she's got the most dismal approval rating that has ever existed since it first occurred to anybody to even measure vice presidential approval ratings. So, implying that you might bow out in her favor is just about the absolute stupidest political thing you could do right about now. And all you had to do was say, yes. It's like the ball is resting right on the lip of the cup and all you have to do is tap it in. But somehow, you wind up 40 yards away in the fucking sand trap. Nobody else but Joe Biden could find a way to turn such a simple question and answer into stepping on a rake while simultaneously punching himself right in the dick. Well done, Mr. President. Well done indeed. Dateline Charleston, Friday, 31 May. In a move that lots of people have been anticipating for a fairly long time, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin finally, after much extended dithering and prevarication, announced this week that he is indeed leaving the Democrat Party and becoming an independent. Manchin thus becomes the 4th so-called independent in the Senate, along with Kirsten Sinema of Arizona, Angus King of Maine, and our very own Bernie Sanders of Vermont, all of whom were elected as Democrats and, it goes without saying, continue to caucus with the Democrats and to vote exactly the same as they did when they were Democrats. So now the speculation will turn to what Manchin has planned for his next move, whether he's going to run for a 3rd Senate term as an independent or launch some sort of insurgent centrist run for the White House, which it has long been surmised that he plans on doing. And if he does wind up doing that, well, it makes a bad situation that much worse for Joe Biden because we've already got a bumper crop of third-party/independent candidates in the field, all of whom are woke leftists who will only take away votes from Biden and not from Trump. RFK Jr., he takes 4 to 5 points away from Biden each time his name is in the poll. Jill Stein, 1 or 2%. Cornel West, 1 or 2%. Throw Manchin into the mix, and you're looking at least another 1 or 2%. So the math is bad and just getting worse for Team Biden. Trump is leading outside the margin of error in pretty much all of the swing states right now, and those leads have been fairly steady and stable for a good length of time now. If the Biden campaign was hoping against hope that a Donald Trump criminal conviction was going to soften his support, well, they have gotten pretty much the opposite of the desired result because Trump just had his single biggest 24-hour period for fundraising since he first came down the golden escalator in July of 2015. And if we see convictions in the rest of these show trials, which we're almost certain to see, The result of each one is going to be an increase in the number of people who will crawl naked across broken glass in order to vote to return Donald Trump to the White House, and who will pump every single spare dollar they have into his campaign coffers. There was already a pretty glaring enthusiasm gap in this election, since, let's face it, the next person who is excited to vote for Joe Biden will be the first one. But Biden seems bound and determined to do absolutely everything in his power to increase the size and the breadth of that discrepancy. Which I think we can all agree, or at least all of us who would prefer it if a Big Mac and a gallon of gas didn't cost 15 goddamn dollars, but that's totally fine with us. And that's the end of the Roundup. That's the week that was. May it rest in peace. And with that, I pass the puck to the man who puts the biscuit in the basket and lights the lamp, my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, the man who put the rect in Homo erectus, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.